Thank you, Misha. It is a real honor to be here today with all of you as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of VISTA and reflect upon where we've been and where we're headed. And it's a very moving experience for me personally as I reflect back. I still vividly recall 1968. I was 22 years old, recently out of college, on an airplane to the far end of the country for my VISTA training and then VISTA service. And I'd really never ventured far from home at all. And I remember looking out the window down at the familiar Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania landscape sort of passing under me. And I said to myself, I have no idea what's going to happen, but this is going to change my life. And it did in very profound ways. I was, like a lot of us at that age, didn't have a great sense of direction, and I really found direction and a calling in my time there. And my entry into VISTA, as was discussed earlier, was very much tied to the war on poverty, which I think a lot of us at that time did see as part and parcel of the civil rights movement, the sense of liberation and possibility and opportunity, both with respect to race but also with respect to poverty. I was initially assigned to a Job Corps center, rural Job Corps center on a wildlife refuge in the high desert of eastern Oregon. I signed up for Oregon thinking it would be trees and mountains. I didn't know there was sagebrush and cowboy country, but there was. We lived 35 miles out of town in a number of trailers and temporary buildings for this Job Corps center. And the corpsmen were there, mostly from the southeastern part of the United States, learning primarily heavy equipment skills, but cooking skills, anything to make the community operate. I was a teacher. I wasn't trained as a teacher before VISTA training. I taught English and math during the day. The corpsmen alternated between training and education. They would be out in the field for a week at a time sometimes. I taught during the day, tutored at night. We were all in it together. We ate meals together. So it really was the 24/7 because of the way we were situated. The corpsmen were mostly in their late teens, early 20s. I was a year older than some of them were. I was thinking to myself, what do I have to offer? But it was a tremendously rewarding experience, and I got a sense of the commonality. They were really far from home, and I was really far from home, and here we were in ranch country in cold eastern Oregon. It didn't last for long because the Job Corps Center was closed. The administration made a judgment that running these rural Job Corps centers out in the middle of nowhere was not economic, and I was assigned to a migrant project in the Willamette Valley in western Oregon. And there were string beans, strawberries, other kinds of berries, hops in the spring. And so there was a migrant stream at that point that was coming primarily from the Rio Grande Valley, primarily Hispanic. 10 years earlier, it had been primarily an Anglo migrant stream from Oklahoma and Texas. And there was also a Russian Old Believer community in several of the small towns in rural Oregon. So you had in some of these small towns 3 very different cultural settings: the established farming community, newly arrived migrants, and the Russian community. And the program was, I think, very unusual. Something was done then but isn't done now. The Valley Migrant League that I worked for was funded directly by the Office of Economic Opportunity, one of the War on Poverty programs. It was not a local organization. It was a separate organization with offices in various small farming communities. We had a terrific director of that organization who believed very much that this should be farm worker run. And so the board of directors of the organization had primarily farm workers on it, and each of the communities where there was a center had farm workers on it. And my job was partly to help coordination among those, help to set up a credit union, et cetera. But there were so many valuable lessons that I learned coming out of that. One of them was we were not allowed to have a beard or a mustache so that we didn't look like we were agitators and troublemakers in these small communities. And in fairness, there was a lot of change going on. There was the societal change at large. This was after 1968 and the the demonstrations at the conventions and the anti-war movement, there was a lot stirring up. There was a lot changing in society. The Chicano movement was just getting started. The United Farm Workers were organizing, and the local people were afraid that Cesar Chavez was going to come to Oregon and organize farm workers. There was a lot of tension, and we didn't need to add to that tension in the communities. But the program, in addition, it offered adult education during the winter for migrants who were settling out of the migrant stream, some job training. In the summer, it was just basically social services, helping people get medical care and that sort of thing. But another thing that came out of the program was developing leadership among the farm worker community who were settling out of the migrant stream and trying to find a place in the community. And these local councils of farm workers really helped to give some experience to self-government and self-determination in these small towns, and gave them some voice to deal with, like the local school board or the local city or town office or something, where problems could be worked out. There was a lot going on. It was very fluid because the families themselves were fluid. They would be there for, I mean, one of the stark contrasts to me, I come from a family, one branch of which hasn't left Southeast Pennsylvania in 250 years, and here I am among families who move on every month or every 2 months. It couldn't have been a starker contrast. But so many things came back to me as I thought of this. One is relationships. And again, this was pretty much a 24/7 job for me then, both relationships with my fellow VISTAs on that project. We lived close to each other, we kept in touch with each other, we supported each other, but the family relation, or the relationships with farm workers working in the project, or former farm workers, their families, and the relationships and the learning that comes out of this. It was deeply moving, and there was my eyes were open to a very different cultural experience. One thing about that I came to understand about the migrant stream, it's so different from how I grew up, that people take care of each other. There was a sense of shared responsibility. If you lived in a 3-bedroom house with 10 children, and your brother-in-law was coming from Texas with 5 kids in the back of the truck, you put them up in your house, and you took care of them, and you invited them in. And there was a generosity and a shared sense of responsibility, and a very strong sense of family and faith that I felt immersed in, that I've really carried with me ever since. I also got a real sense of what it feels to be like as an outsider, because particularly the Hispanic migrants who were coming from South Texas were regarded and regarded themselves as outsiders in these small communities. And as I identified with them and identified with a program that was viewed as an outsider, that was an experience that I'd never really had before. Another thing that I got out of it was just being uprooted from where I had been and what was familiar. And I got an appreciation, aside from the program, for the vastness of this country and the West, and something that I've carried with me in my work. And then, as was mentioned, that my VISTA experience really was the inspiration for me to go to law school. We had 2 VISTA lawyers on the project who did a lot of work helping people with welfare applications and that sort of thing. But a profound change that they made was that the camps, the migrant labor camps, were often operated in a very closed fashion, where it was difficult for people to get in to meet with people or to offer services to them, or for them to leave. And these 2 VISTA lawyers worked with several lawyers in Portland, Oregon, to bring lawsuits under the anti-peonage laws, which were passed along with the 13th Amendment after the Civil War, because the people were being kept in conditions where they did not have the sort of freedom that the 13th Amendment was intended to accomplish. So that inspired me to go to law school. I frankly thought I was going to be a legal aid lawyer, but I went to the Justice Department, and then for the last 35 years I've been in the Solicitor General's office, and that is an effort to sketch me from a recent argument up there. But I have carried with me those memories in the work that I do in several important ways. One is I did fall in love with the West, as I said, just geographically and the history. And so one of my responsibilities is for the Interior Department cases in the Supreme Court, lands and water and Indian law, and which brings me into contact with the history of the West, which I would never have been exposed to if I had not gone out there. And the other is just an appreciation for the huge diversity of the American people and the energy and the striving within our various communities. I mean, I saw within the migrant community the best that is in America in terms of taking care of each other and a sense of community and a sense of patriotism. And it made me appreciate that in pockets of communities that may be vastly different from myself or vastly different from my current job, that there is this humanity striving for the best for themselves and for their children and for the future. And I am reminded of that, and occasionally I get cases involving farm workers, and I feel like I have that. I feel like I have that perspective. So the VISTA experience, partly by chance, but life is largely by chance in many ways, introduced me to what turned out to be my path of life in the law and public service in the government. And I am extremely grateful for having had that experience, and I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to be reminded of it today and to tell you a little bit about it today. So thank you all for being here and your participation in the event and your work with VISTA.